Hey, welcome! Thanks for tuning in. This is There's Something About Archviz, a podcast where I discuss with experts and industry leaders about the many sides of the Archviz industry. I'm your host, Federico Biancullo. I'm an Archviz artist, founder of The Big Picture, blogger, and content creator in the field of architectural representation. I'm on a journey to learn more on all things about Archviz, art direction, business, technology, you name it. And I would like you to be a part of this journey as well. Through these conversations, my hope is to bring light to not so obvious topics connected to our industry and help you grow as a professional, as an artist, and why not, as a human being as well. So please join me. Without further ado, let's jump into today's episode of There's Something About Archviz. Hello, my friends, and welcome once again to There's Something About Archviz. You're listening to episode number 8, and this one is thought for those of you looking for a job position in Archviz, be it an entry level or a senior role, doesn't really matter. The story of today's guest is surely going to be a major inspiration on how to challenge your assumptions about yourself, and it will probably push you to press that send button on your job application. You've probably already heard about Lucia Frascerra, I guess. She's a senior Archviz artist. She's working right now at Secchi in London, but she has previous senior experience at DBOX and Cityscape. Today, I have Lucia on the mic telling us the story of how her passion for Archviz was born and how she went from living in a small town in Tuscany to working for the biggest names of our industry in London. During her career, Lucia has experienced the Archviz industry from several angles, and our conversation revolved indeed on how her responsibilities change when shifting from a role to another and when moving between companies of different sizes. We also discussed very important topics for any job hunting artists, such as personal skills and the attitude to show for a successful career in Archviz. And we also talk about what companies expect from a candidate and from their portfolio. This episode is really a no-brainer for all of you considering to pursue a career or a position shift in Archviz, so I'll leave you to our conversation. Enjoy! Lucia, so how are you?
Well, I'm good. It's been a weird, wild year, I think, for everybody. And but I can't complain. We, work, and thank God we didn't really have any very, very big problem in the office. So I'm glad for that. And yeah, so I'm glad to to be here to talk to you about my story. I mean, my Archviz journey started when I studied in Florence architecture. So I studied in Florence. I have a master's degree in architecture, and back then I didn't really know. Back then, I mean, in the first year or two of university, I didn't really know what Archviz was. Everything was done by hand, or at least in my university. I'm sure that in other parts of the world is different, but where I study was like first year especially, everything was done, drawing, like very, very old school, which was actually not bad. It does teach you a lot about discipline, especially, and composition and a lot of things. So I think from the third year of university, I discovered renderings, that people who went to, set their exams, they would get probably higher marks if they represented their project better. If I had a very beautiful project, but I didn't know how to represent it, I couldn't get as good mark as somebody else who actually spent a bit of time in the representation. So I got very into that. And I self-taught Photoshop and some very, very basic software at the beginning of my Archviz career. I didn't know that some offices were doing this. I didn't know I could do this as a job. I knew that there were some figures inside architectural practices who were doing this representation, graphics, and renderings, but I didn't know that you could actually, do this as a job. So I got into that. I watched a lot of tutorials. I think the very first person I started to follow was Alex O'Greef. I don't really know how to pronounce his surname.
Alex O'Greef, yeah.
O'Greef, yes.
I think Alex O'Greef has been the common thread between all of us wanted to improve their skills in representing their projects.
Yeah.
Not many people knew about Alex at the time, but I was one of those people. It was kind of an inspiration for me as well for starting with my content creation activity. But anyway, yeah, he also spoke about not just Archviz, but also about representing projects in a pleasant way.
Yeah, exactly. Portfolio. I think he did a lot of, portfolio graphics representation. So it was super, super good. I loved it so much, his blog, and I watched every tutorial, and I think I learned Photoshop in the Archviz field just because of him, and it was great. But I didn't know 3D at all. So I basically started to do at the beginning very basic modeling in SketchUp, then switching to Rhino, but then I didn't know how to actually render that. So I didn't know V-Ray, I didn't know any of those render engines back then. I started to do renderings with Atlantis. To be honest, the water of Atlantis was brilliant. There was like the material water. I don't think you could do any material whatsoever, but the water.
For students listening, that's good to know.
Yes, it was really good. And then from there, basically, were clay renders, and I started to do a lot like Photoshop, following Alex Sographer in tutorials and stuff. So that's actually where I started to develop my passion for post-production, because for many years everything I did was mainly adding texture in post, how to add texture in post. So I had to figure out how to do it, of course, with the help of tutorials and stuff. And then after a few years of this, I was about to get my master degree. And then I realized one day that I said, you know what? I'm going to become an architect. I'm going to get my degree. Fair enough. But what I really want to do is this. So I really want to do visualization, because at some point I also realized finally that you could do this as a job. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I discovered this is because I also discovered Mir. So of course everybody knows Mir, and of course if somebody don't know Mir, shame on you. It is this Mir incredible work, something that it was done, I don't know, in 2009 or something like that, and it blew my mind.
Yeah, and I think that Mir's work, even nowadays, it's still top notch. Even though there's so many firms that do amazing stuff, but Mir has that something extra that you don't really see anywhere else.
I know. Of course, now, as you said, there are like many other incredibly good studios, but I think back then they were so much up there, they were so much like gods. And I say that's not possible. Like, how could you? And I was looking at my images done with Atlantis and Photoshop. I say, what, how is that they could go from a base, what they are doing, not just, of course, technically, because at the time I was more focused on learning any technique. I didn't know which one was the best, and there isn't like best one. The important thing is to learn some and trying to do the best with the one that you learn. But I didn't have any idea of how, with the knowledge that I had.
When you realize that actually the trick is very simple behind those images, because technically those images are simple. Most of the time, Mir's images are more about the photo, more about the integration than anything else. When you discovered that, how did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it blew my mind, but I didn't discover that for a very long time, because I was still in university back then. And again, Mir was the only studio that I discovered. And after that, I think I found out about Peter Guthrie and The Boundary. Well, The Boundary, I don't think it existed back then, but it was just him and some, images that he posted online. And then, of course, it was Alex Roman with his The Third and the Seventh movie, which was, again, something incredible. I think that was done in 2007 to 2009, something like that. And I couldn't imagine how somebody could do that. So that was an insane inspiration for me. And I said, I don't care. I just want to do this. And these people, they must have started somewhere. So I am starting now. I really want to, even if I get half of their quality, half of the beauty of the images that they are doing, I will be, I will die a happy woman. I will be super happy. But it was kind of, interesting to explain to my dad that I wanted to become a 3D artist after, he paid university architecture for for many years for me, which, to be honest, I'm really glad that I've got, master degree in architecture, and it's totally fine. And it helped me a lot in terms of many, many things. But of course, you don't need a master degree in architecture to be a 3D artist. So it's not necessary. It could help in many ways, but it's not necessary. So I tried to pitch to my dad the fact that was my dream. That was what I wanted to do. So he and my mom sponsored a course. So I did a course to actually learn some 3D because, of course, you can be... I think that there is just something that you can do doing a little bit of Photoshop with a base of Atlantis. I mean, okay, if you get very, very good at that, fair enough. But I thought that to be able to at least have a chance in working in one of these offices, I had to learn at least the basics of software.
Tools are tools, if you think about it. Apart from the fact that firms do have requirements when it comes about tools, it's because they allow you to do certain things that more basic tools cannot. Even though the images is not linked itself to the tools.
Absolutely.
It's still the basis of doing an image. So it's still important in a way. It's not the most important thing, but it's still the foundation of what we do. So good thought anyway. And then you took off from there.
Yeah, so I learned the basics of, in this case, 3ds Max, but it could be, Cinema 4D or whatever else you decide to use. In that case, I chose 3ds Max. For no particular reason. It's just because I knew that was one of the top software used in the industry and everything. And back then, again, my idea of industry was really, really small. So I didn't really have a very big picture of everything. And anyway, so I did this course in parallel with my last year university. And then at the end, I got my degree, and then also I finished the course. The course was actually quite long, it was like a year course. But thinking about that, it was not necessary to do such a long thing. I chose one that this school provided, was something like learning from AutoCAD to Rhino to Revit, every single software possible. And then there was, of course, a big chunk of 3ds Max, a very, very small one about V-Ray. Of course, Corona was not even existed, I think. So it was actually pretty long, but completely unnecessary. And at the end, after that, I started to work on my portfolio. So that's when I, taking reference images and trying to figure out how best to put together a portfolio, I created this probably about 10 images, something like that. I also created them because just after the graduation and after finishing this course, I was called from the school where I did this course to be a teacher of post-production, because I did do a lot of self-teaching about post-production. And then this school didn't really have a module of post-production. So they decided, you kind of know a little bit more, just come here and let's start from scratch a post-production course, post-production for Archviz, of course. So we started then, and I had to produce some images for the students to work on. So that's when basically I was producing my images for my portfolio, but also for the students. So some of these images are very, very heavy in terms of post-production, just for this reason, because I intentionally wanted to create something that was useful for them. And then basically after creating this portfolio, I started to post images online. The only website that I knew was a CG Architect. I didn't even know the CG Architect was a big deal at all. I thought it was, I know this, but I didn't know, I didn't know anybody in the industry. I didn't know Jeff Motto. I didn't know nobody. So I started just to see if I get some kind of feedback, if this image is good, if the image is not good, just to have an idea. So I started to post, I think, probably 2 or 3 images. That was 2014, 2015, I think. And then with my great surprise, one of them got the Pro of the Week. Again, I didn't know it was a big deal, but Pro of the Week in CG Architect means that everybody that's got a subscription to CG Architect newsletter, receives every week or so the email where, the Pro of the Week is featured. Again, I didn't know that everybody in the industry basically has got a newsletter from CG Architect.
You got a notification about your image.
Yeah. So everybody who got that, of course, saw the image, and it was that was the image that changed my life, honestly.
Which one was the image?
So that one is called Arctic. It's basically one that is with ice. There is sea and ice
All right,
in the
yeah.
foreground.
Yeah.
And then there is some kind of Libeskind-ish.
I'm picturing that.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that image, yeah.
That was that one. And then from that one, somebody at DBOX contacted me on LinkedIn. So I received a message from one of the directors at DBOX, and I honestly, I'm not even joking, I thought it was a joke from some friends of mine, because I knew DBOX as a name. I didn't know how big they were and how important they were in the industry, how influential. But I knew kind of course, the name a little bit. And then I saw this message saying, by the way, we saw your image on CG Architect, blah, blah, and we are interested in offer you a position in our studio in London. And yeah, for like 5 days, I completely ignored it. Seriously, I'm not joking. I ignored it. I said, oh yeah, that's nothing. I mean, that's just a joke. I knew like a couple of friends of mine. One of them is actually my boss now, so I should like not say it. But yeah, say, it's probably one of their jokes. So nothing serious. And then I thought about it. It's like, wait a minute, maybe it's not a joke. So I looked this person up and I saw who he was, and I said, oh my God, they really...
He's a legit guy.
He's legit, yeah. And think of the fact that back then I didn't really know English very well. So English language, I was not fluent at all. And I never really left my hometown for anything except for a brief, few days holidays, and that's it. So I actually knew London pretty well, just because the only few holidays I would do is in London. I always loved it. But it was a massive, massive change for me just to even think of moving away. I was in that mindset, which was wrong. Now I see it. I say that was so wrong. Thinking that you were born in this small town in Tuscany and then you're going to die in this small town in Tuscany, and you're never going to do anything else. Because I always was very, very scared of going and put myself in the game. So I would never have gone looking for a job abroad back then.
The job got looking for you, actually.
Exactly. So it is insane. If I think about it now, say that's absolutely insane, because if it wasn't for that image and if it wasn't for, this person at DBOX looking at it and sending me that message, my life would have been completely different. So it is absolutely crazy if you think about it.
If you believe in destiny, probably that's a sign from destiny.
Totally. I mean, even if you don't believe it, I mean, that's what it is.
That could be made an argument for that, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, I had an interview with this guy, and of course, the interview was English. Was the scariest day of my life. I can't even start thinking about that. Of course, we went through my portfolio and we started, of course, from the first image of my portfolio, but I had a very tiny screen, so I couldn't have like their picture in one part of the screen and my portfolio in the other part of the screen. So I decided to take just the Skype conversation, because I couldn't really understand without seeing their mouth moving. Yeah. So I said, okay, I'm just gonna go by heart. I don't remember. And of course, I'm stupid. I didn't print it. So it was so bad. So bad. Yeah. And they started for the first image, but because the first image was called Summer in the City, I think, I just panicked and I started to describe another image, which was called Summer is Coming. I don't have a lot of imagination in naming my images, by the way, but so it was absolutely hilarious. But lasted about an hour or so, and I think at the end I was so exhausted mentally and physically. I said, oh my God, these people must hate me. I could not picture my future going anywhere that isn't here in my small hometown. But actually, for some reason that I still don't understand, they call me back and they offer me a position as a junior in DBOX London. So that was insane. It was really, really good. And I started working for them in 2015 in July, and since then I'm moved to London, and I'm still in London. So I moved a few companies in between, but it was my first, and I loved it so much.
That's a great start. I mean, thinking about starting at DBOX, not many people could say that, honestly. Did you know at the time that DBOX was such a big deal in the industry?
No, not at all. I discovered it as soon as I started working for them. So I started working for them, and I was like, they actually hire a helicopter to to take pictures. And that for me was, fantasy. Like, was not possible.
Well, you got the most luxurious and big idea of Archviz, probably.
Yeah, like, they're working for, they are Archi stars. Like, I always had like dreams about this. I didn't know that this existed. They have, this image costs this amount of money, and it was a dream. I can totally say that it was a dream.
It's also interesting to see how you move after DBOX, because right now you don't work at DBOX, right?
Yeah.
You went to progressively smaller and smaller companies. Is it because you began being aware of how the Archviz industry worked and about the responsibilities you could have on an image?
Yeah, it was, many reasons. I think the most important part was the relationship with clients. And I really wanted to get that hands-on experience, which unfortunately in a very big company is a bit more difficult to get. It was totally possible, but I think in a smaller company, now I'm Secchi Smith, and which is a small boutique, very new company, which is very different from, DBOX, super established, like 20, probably 25 years going company. Then Cityscape, again, like 20-year or something company, maybe a bit less, but very, very established.
Yeah.
And the dynamics were very different. For example, the big companies like Cityscape and DBOX. Of course, Cityscape is pretty big. It is smaller than DBOX globally, because Cityscape has got just London.
Yeah.
Of course, DBOX got many branches, but actually in the actual studio in London, Cityscape was actually bigger. So the Archviz team was actually not that dissimilar, but it was still very, very big. And so all the process was much more, regimented, and there's a lot of hierarchy in both of these companies, because of course you need to have that, because there are big companies and you cannot do it. The difference here, we are just now, I think we're gonna be probably 10 people. So we are opening now an office in Florence also. So we have an office in London, and we're gonna have an office in Florence. I think we're gonna be 10 between here and Florence, something like that. So it is much smaller. I think Cityscape, when I was there, was about 60 people, and of course not everybody doing Archviz. There was a big chunk of management, big chunk of project managers, and also difference is that in big companies you do have project managers. That's really, really big difference. So a lot of the client relation is handled by project managers most of the time. So I realized I really, really needed to be like a complete, entity in Archviz. I wanted to get very, very hands-on with clients, know how to have a relationship with them, and how they could actually know you as a person and know what you are capable of doing, instead of going always, through somebody else, which could have been, your boss or your project manager. In a smaller company, in this case, is basically me. Now I am a senior person, and then there is just one step above me, which is my boss, and as the owner of the company.
That means that you have direct relationship with your clients during a job.
Exactly.
Which you didn't have at Cityscape and DBOX.
At Cityscape I did, but we did have project managers as well. So it was not like 100%, let's say, which was really good, because of course, especially when you start, you don't want to have everything on your shoulders, right? You want to learn, and project managers are incredibly useful for that, because they help you to manage, the project. That's their title, which is really good. But at some point, it was kind of progression. Of course, in DBOX, I started as a junior. So again, if you're a junior, it's less and less what you actually do with client. Then I went to be a senior at DBOX again, but because of the very big hierarchy that it was there, then there was almost all the time somebody else handling
All right, yeah.
big clients or project managers. But I didn't learn. So I would say that at DBOX I really learned the technique, and they are incredible, like their precision and what they do, because of course of the difference between, you know, their clients, they want like super luxury, everything needs to be super polished and images are perfect. So I really learned a lot about that.
What about responsibilities? You moved to a junior to a senior position. How did you see your responsibility changing in that shift?
I think I saw a big difference, not as much inside one company. I saw the big difference in the different companies that I work with. I moved to senior in DBOX, and of course, as you move up, a little bit of try to manage a little team, try to manage a junior person, do a bit of an induction to a junior person. But basically, just after I became senior at DBOX, after a few months, I think I moved. So I didn't have a lot of time like to explore my role as a senior at DBOX. So I did become a real senior, I think, a Cityscape when I went there, because it's being like a big company and big teams. As a senior, you are the lead most of the times. So you need to be able to handle a team of a few people. These people can be juniors, can be midweights, can be other seniors, because it's possible that you are the senior, you work with other seniors, but you are the senior lead of that project. Next time, somebody else could be the senior lead of that project. So it was incredibly interesting to actually have a little bit of a bigger team to manage, and having more relationship with clients in that sense, having a bit more, going to meetings more. Of course, nowadays we don't really go to meetings anymore because of COVID and stuff. But back then, of course, you could. Cityscape has got a big culture of, having a personal relationship with clients. So they try all the time, like, to go to the meetings and seeing people in the flesh.
Yeah.
Or, talking on the phone. So it was everything kind of pretty new to me. I really enjoyed that part. I say enjoy because I feel like I learned a lot. It's not my favorite part of the process, to be honest, like dealing with clients, but is really good to learn how to do it. And I think that Cityscape really taught me that, and I got a chance to, manage big projects there, and with big teams, and it was really good.
And what about today? You've moved to Secchi Smith, which you mentioned being a boutique visualization office. How did you see your responsibilities shifting? Cityscape had this hierarchy, as you mentioned, and now you work in a 10-people office. And I guess hierarchy there is more horizontal than vertical. How do you see your role changing?
I would say that because now we don't have a lot of management at the top. So our hierarchy is just basically the two owner of the company, and then there are the seniors, and then the juniors or midweight or whatever. So the hierarchy is very, short. So that means that because we don't have project managers, we don't have anybody else above me except for my bosses. So the responsibility for the images and for the relationship with the client is basically 100% on the seniors' shoulders. Of course, the bosses are quite into the process. They always make sure that we deliver, a high quality product. So they do a lot of quality control and everything. But I feel like I am much more into the process, even more with clients.
There's something else I wanted to ask you about the division of roles between juniors and senior. It's kind of, blurry in our industry. There's not a clear definition. So in your opinion, what can a junior candidate expect when moving to an Archviz company?
I think it depends a lot on the actual company. Maybe if you come to our company, it's slightly different from if you go to a different company. Some companies have some specific requirements, or some other don't have any. So in some companies, maybe you can go and you don't know even how to use a software, and then they will teach you that. Some other company, they say, yes, you're a junior, but you need to be able to, for just an example, use this software.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a person working for a large Italian architecture office, which has a large in-house team. We're having almost an argument about that because I was like, okay, well, it's a junior. You don't need these people to know software from day one. And the person was like, no, they have to know software from day one because they have to be fully integrated into our workflow. So yeah, that's how you say it. It varies from company to another.
Yeah. I would say that though, unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, it's kind of two sides of the same thing, is that to get a job, our industry is not like any other industry. I would say it is different. It's more the portfolio that you come with. So if you come with no portfolio at all, your chances to get a job are very, very minimal. You can be a really good, I don't know, artist or whatever, but if you don't show anything, it is quite rare that somebody would hire you just because, I don't know, you take, for example, beautiful pictures. So you can be a good photographer. That's absolutely a plus. And as a company, we are very, very into people who have other interests, who are artists, for example, or who are very good photographers. We really like that. And I know that as a company, if we get somebody who is very interested in like learning from scratch, but this person can prove that they have a very good eye for composition, eye for color, even if it's not through Archviz, maybe it's through art, maybe it's through something else, I'm sure that we could take them into consideration because our company is very focused on that. It's more like color and composition. That's the most important thing for us. So everything else can be taught, I think. So if you are very into coming in our office, very into, learning especially, and willing to learn from scratch, and you're really good in something else, so you show us that you're really good and you want to learn, fair enough, you can have a chance. But I would say that if you don't have any portfolio whatsoever and you are like completely zero, you don't have anything else, like no art, no photography, nothing that can prove that, why should I hire you instead of hire somebody else that at least got some kind of knowledge and can prove that they can actually be an asset for my company? So that's a little bit blurred because I'm sure that there are so many people out there that they want to start and they at the moment maybe they don't have a portfolio, they don't have a specific skill that they're really good at yet. But that becomes a little bit tricky, I would say. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I would say it's a bit tricky.
I will touch this portfolio topic a bit later because it's also something that I'm really interested into. But going back to the topic of defining roles, and what about senior candidates? In your opinion, what are the skills that a senior has to show to be a good senior artist?
I think the most important thing, if you exclude, of course, the quality of the work that this person produces, but let's just exclude that. I would say the most important thing is to being able to manage a team and lead by example. That's, I think, the most important thing, being a good leader. Because a senior most of the time will have a small team, even if it's just one other person, which is another junior. The senior needs to be able to teach the junior and to be there for this junior and try to give constructive feedback. So also being able to give feedback, which is very difficult, I have to say, especially if, the junior did something wrong and you need to correct them without being mean or being kind of sensible for this other person. I think that's a really, really good skill to have. And it's something that people are just born with it. Some other people need to learn how to be better. Also, for example, taking good responsibility of the team. So you are the senior, you are the lead of the project. And if the project goes down, yes, it could be because, maybe the junior made a mistake, but as a junior, juniors make mistakes, even seniors make mistakes. But you are the lead of the project, so you need to take responsibility of the outcome. So I think, to me, that's the most important thing that a senior should have.
I really like your answer, I never saw it that way when it comes to seniorship. I always saw it more about communicating properly with a client.
That would be probably the second best.
Yeah, but it's really eye-opening what you say. It's really important also to have people skills when it comes to seniorship.
Yeah.
And to lead by example, as you said, being a nice person. It's really important to be a leader, a person that acts in a certain way towards their coworkers, be they junior or other seniors. So yeah, that's really nice what you said. I really liked it. And we mentioned personal skills, but what about the attitude? What's the right attitude to be an Archviz artist, in your opinion?
I would say that comes for, I don't know, either junior or senior or anybody really is, I will go back to the feedback thing. So receiving feedback in the correct way. So when somebody gives you feedback, it could be, positive or negative or whatever it is, especially negative. Your attitude should be as, of course, it is a constructive feedback. I shouldn't be demoralized or depressed about this and try to kind of be resilient and go on regardless. Some project will go bad because everybody had a project that went bad. And then trying to always improve the next project. Sometimes can be difficult, sometimes can be easier, but always being resilient in going. I think that's not necessarily just for this industry. Resilience is one of the things that is probably, especially this year, everybody dealt with.
Yeah, exactly. It's a key word that's been on the mouth of basically everybody this
Exactly.
last year.
So it's probably a cliche what I'm saying, but
No, I don't think it is. But many people discover resilience during these months. It's very important, especially in an industry that is as challenging as ours, to be, tough and have this kind of grit. Even more than resilience, be persistent and be aware and prepared to receive feedback, receive criticism, accept that things go bad. That's very important, not to be discouraged easily by these things. And it's also very tough because it's a challenging industry. It's a tight deadline industry. It's I wouldn't say it's a straining work, but sometimes it can be really taxing on oneself as well. That's maybe a topic for another time. I wanted to go back one step and ask you something that we missed in the previous steps of the conversation. What did you enjoy the most of working at each company that you worked at, even your current one?
I would start, so being a DBOX, just the fact of being a DBOX, I mean, I really enjoyed that. Like being part of that, it was awesome. So I think that's probably the thing that I enjoyed the most, just being part of it. But I would say having, and this can be true for the other companies as well, but of course in DBOX, because it was my first one, so I noticed that more there. So the fact that I was surrounded by these incredibly talented people that I knew that I had to learn so much from them, especially as a junior. And that's actually another thing that I would say in terms of attitude. So I think, again, for senior and junior is the same. I think knowing that you will always have to learn from anybody near you. There is always something to learn. It could be from, another junior, or if you're a senior, you can learn from a junior something. It could be something technical. It could be something about, I don't know, how to interact with teammates or clients. It could be anything, but having this open mind of thinking that there is always something to learn from everybody. And when I joined DBOX, I was so humbled that I knew that oh my God, what am I doing here? And of course, you don't have to think low of yourself, if that's an expression, but that's not the case, not what I'm saying. But knowing that, of course, other people can teach you, and as much as you probably can teach them.
It's basically being humble and being aware.
Yeah, being humble.
Everything's a learning occasion.
Exactly. So not thinking that you know everything. So sometimes it happens that maybe some people, they come across like they think they know everything, but when in reality they don't. And nobody knows everything. The most successful people are the people who are humble and think that they can always improve. So that's not thinking that you go anywhere. So of course, acknowledge that you had a career and you did something very good. So acknowledge that, yes, but there is always room for improvement.
Especially in this industry where technical is still a thing, it's still important. And We often don't have the time, to watch a tutorial to learn a new software, a new skill. And maybe there's somebody close to us, could be a junior, could be an intern even, that teaches you how to do a certain task faster and better. And you don't have to discard that idea just because it comes from a junior or from an intern, because it's still a valid idea.
Totally. I learned from the junior that are working with me all the time, especially technical stuff, because as you said, I am like stuck there. I don't think I'm gonna go anywhere.
It's also younger minds, like they learn faster, they're more open-minded when it comes to technical, so there's also that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. About DBOX, I really enjoyed that part. Then about Cityscape being such a big company and such a big team, really the team spirit that we created there, it was something special. When I started working in Cityscape, we worked on the biggest project that Cityscape has ever had, like was many images for a really high profile client. And I started first day with a team of other 7 people, which was just half of the team that at the time Cityscape was in terms of CGI and stills. Then they had teams of real time and teams of other things, but planning and stuff. But just marketing CGIs, that were stills. It was probably around 15 people, something like that. So it was kind of big. And so half of the team went working on this massive project that lasted 6 months. It was really big. The atmosphere that came out, after these 6 months of really hard work, was something also very different from what Cityscape has always done. So it was such a challenge, such a love-hate kind of thing, because it was super hard, but it was actually super good in terms of, team building, and it was a massive learning curve. And so I really enjoyed that. And then I would say at Secchi, and now instead I'm really enjoying the fact that we are a small company. It's not a small company, because 10 people, it's not a small company. Of course in Archviz it's not. When I tell people, they say, oh yeah, I was working for a big company, about 50 people. It's like, what?
Yeah, you can count these companies on the fingers of one hand.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm actually enjoying more working in a company where I know everybody very well. Of course, DBOX and Cityscape were a bigger company, so you knew few people in your team. But then sometimes when Cityscape became very big, at some point there were 60 people or something. I didn't know the name of all of them. So it was actually, it's a bit like now at the moment, I much prefer having this kind of family experience.
That you never had.
That I never had, exactly. I had it, of course, in a smaller team in both DBOX and Cityscape. I've got like friends from DBOX that become some of my best friends, and still in Cityscape I made really good friends. So I had my kind of core teams that I knew very well, but it's different from having the whole company and everybody is in the same boat. Everybody kind of knows what other people are working on, and we jump project to project, something that wasn't really happening before, because it was so structured that basically you were working on your project and that's it. You didn't really know what other people were doing very well. Now is much more, I think, fluid. Just because we are small, I'm sure that if we become much bigger, then this would change, because if you become bigger, that's what's going to happen. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying that.
I also guess that you have a really close eye on other people's projects, which is probably the nice thing about boutique companies. Everybody can chime in and give their feedback on ongoing projects to make them better. Even if you have a few projects in the pipeline, everybody can give their contribution. And this is honestly the thing that I miss the most about working in an Archviz firm. I really feel that sometimes, I have to say. By the way, when you moved to Secchi, did you move on a portfolio basis as well?
It was interesting, because I am really good friends from university with Tommaso, which is the Seki part of Secchi. And I don't think they were looking at the moment, but I wanted to look around from Cityscape. So I wanted to go in a smaller company, more hands-on, etc. I never really consider them, because at the time they were really new. So they, I don't know if you know the story, but basically was what it was before the studio of Forbes Massey, and then became Secchi, but it happened so quickly. And they started off just the Josh and Tommaso, so the two people together with another senior and a junior. So there were just four. And I was in touch with Tommaso, so we were like chatting every now and then, and he would tell me, oh my God, this is very hard. We're trying to get back, all the clients and everything. So I didn't really never consider them as an option.
Mm-hmm.
But then one day I was like talking to Tommaso and say, what, I want to go, and maybe I will apply to this company. I will apply here. And I was like, why don't you apply to us? I was like, that's not bad. That's not a bad idea. So of course, then I had to go through the process of portfolio and everything. So I didn't know the other boss, so I didn't know Josh. We had a conversation with him, and then they then offered me a position.
Okay.
So yeah, it was pretty straightforward.
Okay, and about the portfolio in Archviz, portfolio is a very different entity according to the seniority of the candidate. So what are your tips to craft a portfolio according to the seniority of the candidate?
Right, I think I would say, of course, the quality is very important. So of course, the more senior you are, you expect to see a certain quality, right? And also, I would expect to see a certain style. So I would say the difference between a junior and a senior, even though I try to tell people, even juniors, try to customize the portfolio according to the company you are sending it to. So if you want to work for super hyper realistic interiors, luxury, whatever, maybe don't put in your portfolio ultra photoshopped aerial view of a master plan. Okay, so that's my general advice. And the consistency of the portfolio for me is quite key. Many people might think differently, so that's not like the truth. But if I'm looking at the portfolio, I kind of want to see some kind of consistency. So even from a junior portfolio, of course, I would be much more picky for a senior one. But if it is like a junior one, even, and there is, I don't know, a render of a bathroom, of a vase, something like an object, right? Then so it's a product, and then next to it there is an image again of an aerial master plan, and then next to it there is something completely different. Say yes, okay, so you can do these things, but my company does one thing. My company does this style, and I don't care to see your representation of a product design, because my company doesn't do product design. So that's an advice that I think everybody should consider, either if you're junior or senior. That's really kind of basic. I know that sometimes juniors, they don't have like a lot of experience, so they don't really know what to do, they don't really know where to apply. So basically the end is like, oh, let's just put everything together, something will stick, which I totally understand. And I wouldn't necessarily expect a style in a junior person, because of course they lack the experience, so fair enough. I would expect a style and much more consistency in a senior portfolio.
I'm on board 100%. The consistency and being on target, it's something I've been telling people for 5 years now. So I really love that you said that on the podcast. So thank you, Lucia. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Promise I haven't spoken to you about this before. So
if you think it's common sense, I had a small season of recruitment in 2019, and I started getting architecture portfolios, which is like the extreme spectrum on what not to do when you apply to an Archviz company, if you think about it. But anyway, Lucia, just to move to the end stretch of this conversation, you told me that you basically started looking at visualization from Alex Socrefe's blog.
Yep.
What are today, in your opinion, the most interesting sources to learn, the resources that can help Archviz artists to apply for a job and to get better?
I would say the first thing, and I know it's weird to say now in this time of, COVID and stuff, but I would say networking is the best thing ever in terms of like finding a job. Your network is everything. You have no idea how how many people came to me asking for recommendation for people to hire. And sometimes these people got hired. Or sometimes people came to me, and I'm saying me because, of course, I know, but I know that this happens to many people who know many people. So if I know somebody well, and I know there is a person that I trust very much, I would very happily recommend this person. And there's nothing to do with cheating or anything, because this is a small industry and we kind of know each other pretty much. And it's just natural that if you trust somebody and you are happy, of course, to recommend this somebody, it's not like, oh, I know the name of this person, then I will recommend. That's not advisable. But it happened to me that I really trusted some people and I recommended them to the companies that they wanted to apply for. And that means that these people got the job. Of course, these people are great, but it is also true that these other people trust me, which means that if they trust me, they are more likely to hire this person because they know that I wouldn't screw them up, right? So I think having a good network and knowing people through conferences, for example, and through, events and stuff like that, that really helps. Okay. And, with, of course, colleagues and having, good relationship with people in general is really important, because if you don't really work well with a team, then you're going to have like a bit of trouble in other companies and stuff. So I think networking is really, really good. Plus, when you go to a conference and you just go there with your portfolio and 5 minutes, people see you. If you do a good job, then people would just see it and say, oh, why? That's quite nice, and give me your card. And that's super easy. So, and then that person is going to remember you next time. And then next time when you send him an email, say, oh, by the way, we met at, D2 conference. And, so many jobs were found like this. So that's one thing. In terms of improving, in terms of like online things, I would say, of course, like having a look at, of course, CG architects. That's always a good source of, just to have an idea of what's around. Everybody's kind of on CG architect, so you have a good idea of the standard of the industry. That's, I think, pretty good. There are quite a few, I think, courses that you can do, but they're more like courses if you want to learn a technique, for example. If you want to improve in a specific thing, of course, speaking to somebody who is a master in that specific thing that you want to improve, that could help. Or, of course, doing a course specifically on that specific thing. Unfortunately, I don't really know nowadays, because I'm a bit out of the courses that there are now available of everything, so I can't recommend it a specific one. But again, we go back to networking, because if you go to a big conference, even a small one, you meet people from all walk of lives. So and you meet people from many different styles, many different companies and stuff, so it's kind of interesting, and if you ask for advice, they will be very happy to give you the advice. So that's it.
All right. There's a lot of insight here for people that want to undertake a job in the Archviz industry. So thanks for your time. Hope to see you in person pretty soon. Hopefully it's almost over.
Hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcasting app and get a new episode every second week. If you like this episode, help us growing and improving the show by rating and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Got a question, or is there something you would like me to cover in a future episode? Write me an email at podcast@bigpicturevisual.com. Thank you again for listening, and see you next time.